course, one issue is the rights. It's the biggest issue, and it's the most public issue, is the basic rights of women and girls to education, equal opportunity education, and also work to a certain extent. But other than that, that one particular issue, we heard it from the Taliban, and a lot of commentators themselves have talked about it. As far as what other steps that are doable given the context of what Afghanistan is right now, practical also on given the internal limitations as well as stresses and pressures on the Taliban as a group inside, what the international community, is expected out of them. We did discuss in the last meeting at the Institute where we were together about inclusivity, this whole issue of inclusiveness. Do you think there is a growing clarity somewhere in any circles in the US or anywhere else that you participate in, which is basically not here in Pakistan region outside, where you've heard with some clarity what exactly is expected of them as far as political inclusivity is concerned? What would be the formula of that? Who should they include for them to become a little bit more representative that would be acceptable? Because I haven't seen that plan, and that's what we hear from the Taliban also all the time. Every time there's an interaction that we don't know, we haven't really seen this. There's this broad idea that we should just include the older factions into government, which sounds quite non-doable, given the situation in Afghanistan. It's also not really possible in other contexts also. Nobody brings in the opposition, and nobody brings in people who've just fought just like that once they take over power. So some thoughts on that would be great.
Well, I worry that this word inclusivity, or having an inclusive government, has become a catchphrase similar to many catchphrases we had over the last 20 years that is detached from reality. For the United States, I think the focus is the counterterrorism guarantees, not allowing groups, especially Al-Qaeda, to plan and carry out attacks from Afghan soil. And the human rights issues are important, but they're secondary to that, but interrelated. And I of course believe that the human rights issues should be consistently kept in the spotlight. In terms of inclusivity, what does that mean? Do they have some token members from the old guard or from different ethnic groups? What would be the point of that? I think we shouldn't. Of course, the Republic was far more inclusive, but we shouldn't lie to ourselves about how inclusive it was. There were significant problems with the inclusivity of the Republic, exactly. and the elections and the way they were carried out. The executive office of Abdullah, chief executive office, which was unconstitutionally created to have that inclusivity, which created its own set of problems with stability of the Ghani government also. Coming back to something you said on the counterterrorism, that would be a priority for the US, policymakers and interlocutors to sort out. But we did see that the last set of meetings, which were going to be held with the Taliban in Doha, between the US office in Doha, were cancelled on the issue of the girls' education, and Taliban reneging on that. Do you see that if there is no movement on that front with the girls' and women's education thing, do you see that dialogue process? Because I can't imagine these guarantees or CT guarantees or how those guarantees are going to be structured, and who's going to monitor whether those guarantees that the US seeks from the Taliban will be met. Mechanisms can happen without an intensive engagement, at various levels and constant back and forth with the Taliban, whether in Doha or somewhere else. I can't imagine those guarantees coming through. I can't imagine that kind of a framework being structured, mechanisms being structured, which you usually need for this kind of CT work to have some kind of plausibility attached to it. So what do you think, if say the Taliban are ready to give those guarantees, how will we see moving forward? Will the meetings restart in Doha, or how is that mechanism set up where it satisfies both the sides? Well, look, on the CT guarantees, the Taliban have always claimed they're ready to meet it.
All, to everyone, to us too, yeah.
But I think their definition of what meeting it means is different than perhaps Washington's, and this is partly a result of the ambiguity of the US Taliban agreement that was signed in Doha. And so, in the Taliban's view, having Al-Qaeda present in Afghanistan is not really a problem. And I don't think Washington shares that view. We don't know what dialogue is happening behind the scenes or if there's backdoor dialogue. We know that the public-facing dialogue has come to an end for now. And I look, the single best thing the Taliban could do is send girls back to high school. That would restart everything.
The thing.
Absent that, I don't know what will happen. I do not think disengagement is the solution. I do wonder whether it wouldn't be better to engage with the Taliban inside Afghanistan rather than inviting them to international fora, which I actually think legitimizes them even more in exchange for nothing. I actually think it would be more productive to engage with the Taliban inside Afghanistan and to take that diplomatic risk. I don't, some European countries seem to be interested in doing that. I don't think the United States is there yet, but I think it should be. Look, the reason I'm a proponent of engagement is because the Afghan people can't disengage.
That's the thing.
And for that reason, I think the international community has to remain engaged and not deceive itself into thinking that disengagement will alter the Taliban's calculation. In fact, I think it will harden the Taliban's calculation. We have overemphasized the degree to which we can legitimize the Taliban. The Taliban's legitimacy comes from the fact that they won and they kicked out the international coalition.
Absolutely.
That's where their legitimacy comes from. And so, and then we negotiated with them, which also added legitimacy to them. So, for us to now harp, and by us I mean the international community and the United States, for us to harp on the question of legitimacy, I think is short-sighted. We need to ask ourselves not what Afghanistan is going to look like this summer, but what is Afghanistan going to look like 10 years from now in 2032? And we have to get accustomed to incremental change rather than these bubbles of rapid change that were backed by a war economy and a presence of US troops. Yeah, sustainable incremental change, which is slow. I do think the girls' education is a big roadblock, but there are other roadblocks. I also think it's important that the United States, and maybe they've done this, but I'm not aware of it, really present to the Taliban, these are the key issues on a very specific, with very specific points, not general things that we'd like, that you need to do if you want normalization.
Key roadmap.
A key roadmap, because I think if we engage in our typical kind of negotiating style where we engage with the Taliban as if we're engaged in corporate arbitration and we try to get as much as we possibly can.
Maximize our
advantage.
You can't.
If we're maximalist with them, they will see it as a slippery slope. And they are ideologues, and I simply do not think you can engage with ideologues from it by with a maximalist approach. I don't think it works. It works in other forms of negotiation, but not with a movement like the Taliban.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you because you mentioned CT as being a big issue in U.S. view of the Taliban and going forward also. I think CT counterterrorism is a huge issue, current issue between Pakistan and the Taliban government right now. It has come as the forefront issue in our bilateral relationship, a stumbling block, a difficulty, an ongoing issue. But Pakistan, because of various historical and other and geopolitical reasons, we have an approach, and we don't think there is any other option for us but to engage with them over this issue without getting all the asks that we have on CT. TTP has increased its attacks on Pakistan. There are other insurgent groups that go back and forth from Balochistan, also back and forth. There is KP issue, and often what Pakistan is demanding is not being met. There's also issue on the border. So CT, border security, is become a huge issue, bilateral issue between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Yet our approach is such that this is again a long-term engagement. It's going to be an engagement and something that we are going to continue talking to them. And it doesn't mean that our broader relations with Taliban would end and kind of get hinged only on this issue. So I think Pakistan itself is struggling over its relations and not getting what we've been asking for on that key issue, but also Pakistan continues to want to engage with them. As I said, it doesn't have to be a model. It can't be a model for what US does with the Taliban and how US views Taliban.